There's been a growing perception that DEI-infested games, as well as the activists behind them, that they've been beaten. It's over. The battle is won. We're going to get back to basically the good old days. We've got titles like Black Myth Wukong, Space Marine 2. It's good times ahead. We're back to entertainment first. All the weirdness, it's over. Now, I wish I could believe that, delude myself. Unfortunately, I cannot. Because the truth is, you just have to ask yourself, these people in the gaming industry, a lot of them who've made it their worldview to push this stuff on us, push this crap onto everyone, re-educate people as they basically admit they want to control the hobby, control people as well. Do you think that people who've made that their worldview are simply going to give up? That they're suddenly going to turn normal and realize, hang on, I'm not actually an activist. I'm a video game developer. Maybe I should just get back to that. I don't think they are. I think that they're going to retreat because of all of the backlash. There has been significant backlash, which I think has worked to an extent to the games like Dustborn, all of these Sweet Baby Inc. ones, Concord, of course. I think that really pushed things over the edge because these people, these activists, agenda pushers, they flew too close to the sun and they couldn't pretend anymore that it's just about, inclusion. It's about diversity. No. Even Stevie Wonder could see that this was getting super, super weird and something nefarious is obviously getting on. It's actually about you hating gamers now and just being obsessed with your worldview, being not just tolerated but embraced by everyone. That is what Concord, for instance, represented. Everyone was pushing back. It did work to an extent, but again, they're not going to give up on this. They're simply going to retreat and take a new approach. And they're kind of admitting that now. Kim Belair, the CEO of Sweet Baby Inc., who we haven't heard of too recently. Sweet Baby Inc., they sort of scuttled under the furniture like a cockroach. But they're back, and they're plotting their revenge. Everything that comes next. How they're going to go about things next year and beyond in terms of infecting our games. Now, they didn't just come out and say that blatantly. In fact, in this 20-plus minute presentation that their CEO gives, it's basically an airing of grievances, really. It's a presentation basically saying, we're the victims. Everyone bullied us. They were nasty, and we don't deserve it. It's unfair. To be honest, though, they've been saying that they've been victims well before any controversy, before anyone knew who Sweet Baby Inc. were. Like, that was their whole identity. These people who worked there, their philosophy is being victims. That's their worldview. But now they've been extra victimized. They're super victims. And I was going to play some of this, but it really is like a broken record. It's too boring to listen to all of it. But to sum it up, basically, everyone on the right wing is a toxic chud, a toxic victim. They're all to blame. They manufactured outrage. They're just an innocent consultancy. They weren't trying to push an agenda. They were just trying to do some writing in the video game industry, and everyone got outraged for no reason at all. It's so unfair. Elon Musk, he's a big part of it, apparently. Elon Musk is a big reason that everyone turned against him. You can see here, in her presentation is an Elon Musk tweet, which says, Sweet Baby Inc. is an evil blight on the gaming industry. True. But despite this innocent act in the presentation, you only have to go back not too long ago, earlier this year, where people uncovered that in a different presentation, she mentions, terrify them if game devs don't push diversity. And then this is a direct quote where she said, if you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultancy, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility if they don't give you what you want. And she's basically saying, if your bosses will not push diversity, DEI stuff in games and make that their priority, terrify them into believing that there's going to be all this backlash. They're going to get cancelled or something like that. So they keep putting on this act that they're just trying to do some innocent writing, but all they care about, the reason they exist, is to push real-world politics into games onto impressionable people who may not understand that they're being manipulated. That is their goal. Now, I did mention that most of it was just crying we're the victim, but there were quite a few nefarious things that she said, which is why I'm saying that this stuff is not going to go away. They're just going to take a slightly different, possibly more subtle approach. And to give you an example of that, she says, at the core of my approach here and the approach we take as a company, I genuinely believe that representation is not censorship, it's innovation. So when there is, say, a remake of a game, and in the original, you had maybe male and female as the options, when that is changed to type A, type B, body type A, whatever, when they do that, that's innovation, that's not censorship. Let's just change the meaning of words. If we do that, we're not doing anything wrong. Stop talking about censorship. We've changed the meaning and what we say is true, according to Belair. Diversity in narrative makes things more intense. It can make it more visceral and more real. It doesn't have to always make something more wholesome or softer, even though it does like 99% of the time. What a coincidence. I really do believe that by opening up to newer perspectives, by getting folks in the room, we actually push more boundaries and we get more real. Who's getting in the room? Concord had 200 players. It's just this totally false narrative they keep pushing, which is like, if you've got a game and you haven't built the cast of characters in that game with a diversity checklist, with every color of skin, every gender, non-gender, of course, as well, unless you do that, people won't play. But then the numbers tell us the opposite is true. That when you make a game like that, no one plays it, it fails miserably. But when you do the opposite, you just make the game where you focus on the integrity of that game's world, you focus on just a good time for the player, then it sells, it does well. And then if you ask these people for some data that actually proves that maybe a person of color refuses to play games that star a white person, for instance, if you ask for that data, they don't have any, instead they just call you a bigot. How dare you ask? Because we don't actually have the data, we're making stuff up to justify our worldview. And she continues here and says, but what happens when you get harassed is that it doesn't matter what you believe. And what's also frustrating is that it doesn't matter what they believe either. Now, when she says getting harassed, she really means she got criticized and doesn't like it. She might have a handful of examples where unhinged people threaten violence on her and the team. But the thing is, no one's condoning that. Like, that's separate. That's totally separate from the criticism. That's going to happen in every scenario. If something blows up, a controversy or criticism against a company, there's always going to be those unhinged people. But then people like this will just single out those handful versus the majority who are just criticizing and just claim none of the criticism is warranted at all. It's all totally false because one person threatened violence. I remember that with The Last of Us Part 2. It's ingrained in my memory because of how ridiculous it was. I remember The Last of Us 2 script leaked. It sounded absolutely abysmal with Abby and all of that crap. Everyone was criticizing it. And then The Last of Us 2 devs got one of the voice actors to share a DM where some weirdo did threaten violence. Obviously, no one condones that, but then the studio managed to twist the whole narrative into being, it's just a game, stop criticizing it because look at what happens. Someone threatens violence. Just consume product, stop talking about it. And it kind of worked. The criticism died down. So that's really what Sweet Baby try and do here, where it's, oh, we were getting harassed. Most of it's very constructive because it's not just like that a fringe of people who normally don't like DEI stuff were getting outraged here. Everyone was talking about this. Even people on YouTube, for instance, who don't normally talk about woke stuff or whatever, they were coming out and calling out how ridiculous the whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing is, where companies are hiring an outside organization just to infest their game with real-world agendas, basically. Obviously, that's stupid. This is a hobby, video games, entertainment. We just want to have fun. And you're doing this. So the criticism was totally justified. But you play the victim, the innocent act. And she says, because so much of this campaign is just misinformation, it's assumptions and lies about who we are, what we do, and what we want. Again, totally disproven if you just listen to Kimberly, the CEO, and what she actually says. She can claim it's all misinformation, but you look at the clips where she talks about scaring management into pushing diversity. Lots and lots of other things about toxic gamers. We need to get them all out of the industry, just regular people having fun. No time for them because we need to focus on changing the world. She actually said something to that effect about we're changing the world. That's what they really care about. Video games are a tool so she can push her worldview. That's what it's about. And I want to be clear about something because Sweet Baby Inc., they're the symptom. They're not actually the core problem or the cause. I did see a lot of people when this controversy all started back in March, where some people thought if you just get rid of Sweet Baby Inc., gaming goes back to normal. It's them infecting everything. Just get rid of them and it will be fine. Sadly, that's not true because what is actually going on is a lot of these companies, whether it is Naughty Dog, Ubisoft, or whatever, the employees are in on it. They're a huge part of this at these companies. The cultures in a lot of these studios have rotten to the core, where all these people are basically activists. Their main focus is pushing propaganda onto people, and the regular devs who just wanted to make a good game, they've been driven out of the industry because they're not conforming. Those people are long gone. And this just becomes a vicious cycle because it's like the people who are recruiting, they just want to bring in like-minded people. So suddenly you have zero diversity of thought. It's just these insane weirdos, the people at Sweet Baby Inc. There's no difference between what they think and what the devs at all of these studios think. They're one and the same. This is really only going to stop if you just clear out all of the rot. You get rid of most of these people. You can start with all of the DEI-related jobs that are totally unneeded, and then you start looking at competency, who's actually making a difference and putting in most of the work with these games. You could get rid of a lot of these people in the industry, these bloated companies, Ubisoft with ridiculous employee numbers, and despite that, their games are all train wrecks, heaps of trouble. Get rid of all these people, you'll start seeing improvements. It's not just Sweet Baby Inc. And here's where you see the truth of that, because she says here, believe me, when this controversy first started around people calling out Sweet Baby Inc., I was so worried that the studios would stop working with us. I worried we seemed too toxic. And I saw a lot of people sort of saying, oh, they've removed, say, Square Enix from the website. They're no longer working with them. We're winning. It's all going away. All of the woke stuff or whatever. I worried we seemed too dangerous, too beleaguered, too much of a risk to work with. But that is not what happened. What happened was that at least privately, every team we work with was quite supportive. Now, maybe that's not truthful, maybe she's coping, but it is sounding like all of the different clients that she has were actually saying, no, we love you, we love pushing these agendas into all of our games, it's a great thing because we believe in it too. We're just going to be a little bit more quiet now, we're going to keep it on the down low because otherwise there's controversies. People call us out, they make videos about us. Let's just stop talking about it. No more website. As we saw, the Sweet Baby Inc. website, they've removed all of their clients off the page. They just mention a handful of games that they worked on, and most of them came out ages ago, so it doesn't really matter. Just keeping it on the down low, and they're going to change their approach. That's just what's going to happen. The agendas are going to continue to get pushed. They're just going to try and be a bit more subtle about it. And I'll give you a comparison. It's like just in gaming generally, where there was the whole push for loot boxes, where you can't even just buy a microtransaction anymore, buy what you want with real money off the store. You buy a box, and then it's basically a lottery, and will you or won't you get the item that you want? And if you miss out, you got to keep spending money to get it. Eventually, that sort of fell out of at least the Western mainstream, and now everyone's content with microtransactions. Oh, well, at least you can get what you pay for, and it's only cosmetic. Hooray, the industry's saved. The same thing is going to happen with all of this stuff, the DEI stuff, because let's look at how they're going to do it. Let's look at something like Perfect Dark, because we know Xbox loves this stuff, and they're never going to stop this stuff. Let's look at Joanna Dark. Original Joanna Dark from back in the year 2000. Joanna Dark, everyone loved this character. Perfect Dark, gaming was heading in the right direction. And then we get new Joanna Dark. And I didn't just pause on this bad frame on purpose to push an agenda, I swear. It just worked out like that. But we see this Joanna Dark. And it's kind of tricky, because if you sort of point this out and go, this character looks strange, doesn't look like the original, and no one's saying that you've got to make her look exactly like year 2000 Joanna or anything, but there's just something not quite right. Everyone can kind of feel like it, but it's harder to pinpoint. I mean, you can do what people do and you can analyze the facial structure and the chin and everything, but you start doing that and then they'll call you out as weird, that you're the problem. Why are you doing that? Why are you analyzing this woman in the game? It's not the woke people who are a problem, it's the anti-woke. They're the problem, they're worse. And that's what you're going to start to see. It's that narrative shift where they show you Concord, where everything genuinely does look ridiculous. That totally fails, it disappears, the people behind it get fired, scuttle away. But because they've pushed insanity so far, now the new Joanna, or for another example, the new Fable, where we have a truly breathtaking main character, when you compare these to Concord, these appear normal, but you just know that it's not quite right. The same agenda's getting pushed, it's just a little bit more subtle, and they're able to kind of grandstand it and just call you weird for having a problem with that. Well, what are you saying? Are you saying that having women in a game is woke? What is wrong with you? We know it's not that. That's not what any of us are saying, but they'll just push that narrative, and I've seen it work for them. I've seen it work for them many times. And that's how they can just keep going with this. And then in a few years, it's going to be Concord all over again, and they'll just be hoping at that point people have just gotten used to it, conditioned to it, and suddenly that's the new normal. All the craziness is the new normal. And the reason I'm talking about this, the purpose of it, it's not so much that new Joanna Dark, she enrages me, she makes me super mad. Not quite that. It's more the fact that if video games are not being made with the sole purpose of making the best product possible, the best game possible for gamers, for the people who are going to buy them, if that is not your top priority, if there's something else on your mind, if you're thinking, I can change the world here, this video game, it should be more. It should be an opportunity to show people the correct moral way to think. It should be a tool to re-educate people. If any of that is on your mind, which it 100% is with something like Perfect Dark, something like Fable, there's a scale. They're not all the same. Concord is off the scale. These games might not be, but they're a little bit. They're sort of pushing in the wrong direction. It's still a problem, and unless it's pushed back on, it will continue. So any of that talk of, oh, it's all over, or any of the talk about how the pro-DEI and the anti-DEI people, they're all just as bad, which I can't really buy into, because all this is really about is making games as best as possible with no strings attached. How can the games industry be at its best if it's focused on other things? If half the developers, at least it feels like, are not passionate about making the best game possible. They've got other priorities. You've got to get them out. The industry we can't get the best games that we want to play unless these people get out. So I hope, regardless of the extent of the weirdness, whether it is Concord or whether it's Fable, that the pushback keeps happening. It needs to, because it is working, but they're nefarious. They won't stop because they hate you, because they hate us. And this is what they do, so it needs to be criticized. We need to keep talking about it, and I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.